we're gonna give it 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll get rolling. So thank you. Glad you're here.
Boxes of pens at home from a former drug stuff on them.
Former drug. Hey, let me see that. Here he is. Can I give him a little pat?
I know some people are really weird about it, but
Keep your hands off my wife, Michael.
What's that?
Keep your hands off.
That's so bad. Dude, I can't be happier. Gonna have a boy. What? A boy.
Little fella.
Little guy.
Not quite as good as a girl, but it's
It's so bad. Not inaccurate, just bad. Just just that we're exactly not quite sure how all this is going to go down. Right. That's it. That's all I know, man. Sure. But yeah, that's it. That's all I know. Sure. Yeah. Let's see. Zoom out.
So we just wanted to make sure that when you came up, because you said all you needed was a bottle of water when you showed up next weekend, so we wanted to make sure
you got me covered. Thanks,
so
man.
There you go.
Really appreciate that, dude.
Bring that one with you because
thank you.
Now that's
so good.
I'm pretty terrible. I'll probably forget. So.
Oh, that's all right. I'm gonna bring my own water because I think you'll probably forget too. So that's all right.
Well, that's why we.
I know.
I mean, that's important.
I know. I don't know what he did. What did he do? We need this full screen, man.
Now, so there we go. So self-supporting.
Self-supporting.
In the kitchen. I saw the back over there. Yeah.
Oh, did you take it from the kitchen?
Yeah, that's what I said. Get that right away.
I didn't. That was like, I thought it was an ironic deal, but I didn't say anything because
Here's your bottle.
I'm gracious or whatever, right? Yep. So how do I get this full screen again?
Huh? Oh.
I don't want the other stuff up there.
Is it a PowerPoint?
No, it's Prezi. Are you familiar with Prezi?
No, I'm not.
Prezi's awesome.
I know you use that for a while now. Apparently not, because it can't go full screen. Exactly.
Yeah, no, I just had it up there, and Scotty took it away when he did his stuff.
I think you just got to double click the
what? No, that's for the the whole ball wax.
That's the whole ball wax. If you double click the first slide, maybe that'll work.
I tried that.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh well.
Does it have anything like where it plays?
No, I do. I'm doing it manually. Set up so it's manually.
Oh, hit the little thing that says present. Right there. Start presentation. Just click that. See if that changes it.
Yep. Bang.
Money.
There you go.
I knew I can't.
It was awesome. You did. Yes. I'm so glad you're here.
That's my only thing I'm good for.
So glad you're here.
Just throw random shit at the wall and hope something sticks.
Try that. No, that didn't work well.
Hey, try this.
Nothing.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right.
So, for the end of this whole thing, I need $20 worth of spirituality.
Deal. Deal. And the way I read that is $10.01.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sure. From the Times Lion said, I've been doing the whole thing. I've been hammering the whole time. So we get in the vehicle and I'm like, it's dark. It's so freaking dark out. It's just been just the entire ride. Like I have not let it slip right yet. So somebody said something. I said, I was just so excited when I got up and thought about coming down this morning. It's just like,
yeah. Oh yeah. quite the guy.
He is quite the guy. I love him. I really truly do.
That'll be good, man. I hope so. We'll see how it goes.
Happen to have an extra pen laying around somewhere.
You know,
where I can find one.
I tell you what, there might be one on that table right there, brother. You might ask. I'm not sure who's got it. We're going to get started in just a moment. Is there an extra pen for a gentleman who left one? Here we go, brother. Jeremy, we got one? Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet, for sure. Are we ready? We just go?
Fired up.
Okay.
You're online, you're live, so your presentation, yep. So
Sweet.
your presentation won't be shared.
Okay. And they're not
But
recording
audio.
me. They're doing this. Okay.
Yeah, so
got
you
it.
can't see, you're covered here. So.
Okay, cool. Good.
Can I stand there for a little bit? Let people wander in, or
Yeah. Would you mind?
no? That's fine.
That'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. Okay, gang, I think we're going to get started. I know there's some people that will be wandering in here in a little bit, but I want to be respectful to your time, too. You were the folks that showed up on time. We should make sure we honor that. My name is Michael Donnelly. I'm an alcoholic. Before we do anything, why don't we stand and say the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thank you. Before we start, I want to welcome you all. I want to thank you for coming. I really appreciate your passion to have a new experience, hopefully a fresh experience, right? And to share that with all of us. Want to be very clear. There's no, experts here. There's nobody who knows everything. Hopefully we can all learn something new, including myself and others, and take it home with us. And most importantly, practice it, right? Not just learn it, but put it into practice, apply it to our lives, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is smoking is available outside that door. Please just make sure your butts are cleaned up before you return. The bathroom's over here. Please make sure your butts are cleaned up before you return. Oh, wait, sorry. That's doubled up on the announcement. I'm sorry. But there's just right out the door here. There's men's and women's. It's private. Outside of some times that we're going to go and kind of separate and do some independent thinking and prayer and meditation, please don't wander through the church. These folks are really, really good to us. And if for some reason something odd happens, you trip over something, it breaks, whatever, just please let us know so we can go to them and make restitution and repair it up however we need to there. But we'd rather not have secrets on that. Nobody's going to get in trouble or anything, but we'd rather go to them with that instead of have them come to us with it. This workshop today, the origins of it kind of go back probably, I don't know, maybe 25 years, maybe more. When I first came into Alcoholics Anonymous, my sponsor was very big on the Big Book. My current sponsor is still very big on the Big Book. We began to study it when I first came in and try to learn what it was really saying to us and what it was encouraging us to do and to practice. It became very evident very early on that sobriety was the tip of the iceberg. That if what I wanted from Alcoholics Anonymous was not to drink, I could have that. But if that's all that I wanted from Alcoholics Anonymous, I would be grossly underselling this thing, grossly underbuying what's offered. And that began a journey for me. And what we're going to try to do today is fulfill a commitment from my home group. The purpose of our home group, and that's the Treasure Map meeting or the Treasure Map group of Alcoholics Anonymous, we meet on Thursday nights in this gym from 7 p.m. to 8:30. And the purpose of that group is twofold, really. One is to carry the message in a speaker format to people who need to hear that message. That would be all of us, not just new people. And the second thing is to try to provide applications and opportunities for people to actually apply the steps to their life. So often in meetings, we hear what we should be doing, and there's no venue to actually learn how to do it and apply it and practice it to our lives. And so this is literally an outreach from our home group. And so I appreciate all of you being here. With that being said, is anyone here from out of town? Could you raise your hand? Excellent. Could you tell us a little bit about where you're from? Could you start here, sir?
From Dan, I'm alcoholic from West
Fargo,
Fargo, Dakota,
North Dakota.
Brian, alcoholic, Fargo, North Dakota, my group, won't take that time group.
Excellent. Stephen?
I'm Sarah, an alcoholic. I'm from Rochester, Minnesota, and I'm from Wisconsin. I'm Louise, I'm from Rochester, Minnesota.
Excellent. Anyone?
I just have one.
I'm Tony, alcoholic addict. My home group is at Brewing 11 Historical.
Sioux City, home group, drunk, helping drunks.
There you go. Sir?
And the book of for diet. I don't have a home group because I'm just a committee member from my area. I go to all meetings. So I just turned my money to come here and do this, so just try something different.
Good. Glad you're here, man.
Eric Bossett, Rookies South Dakota. My home group is Saturday morning meeting at Original Group. Neil Sterling, Rookies South Dakota. Home group.
Very good. Anybody else from out of town? Yeah, Mike. Very good.
Jerry alcoholic, groups also at Wednesdays, 9:30. here.
Great to have you. Anybody else? Anybody who's a Treasure Map Home Group member, could you raise your hand? Welcome and thanks for being here as well. Anybody else from Sioux Falls that would like to introduce themselves? You guys?
I'm Cindy. I'm an alcoholic and health counselor. But I do
Yep. Very good. Very good. Wade?
Me, alcoholic, Southside.
Excellent. Let's get any of the boys there. Anybody over there? Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. So very, very diverse. Do we miss anybody? Very diverse group. I know some more folks will be coming in. Please just get to know each other, right? I mean, we have a nice spread of people here, right? From North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, right? Some folks from Minnesota. Great contacts if you're traveling around on vacation, whatever. It's always great to have a few extra numbers of local folks in the areas. And just appreciate you all coming out. So with that being said, what we'll do is we're going to scoot through some things, right? So the very first thing I think that's important is on when we start talking about steps 10, 11, and 12 is how do we get there? Well, I was taught, it doesn't mean it's right, but I was taught, I think it's right. I think I find vestiges of it in the book, right? Where I don't have to wait to complete the first 9 steps to begin to apply the principles and the tenets and take the actions in 10, 11, and 12. It's been my experience over the years that we talk about working a daily program. We talk about living in the moment. We have these sort of phrases, living in the now, that we use in Alcoholics Anonymous. 10, 11, and 12 is the big book's prescription on how to do that. It is absolutely how to do that. And I don't need to wait to finish all the amends on my 9th step to start living in the moment or in the now, right? But just some backdrop so we understand sort of where we kind of came from. Step 1 says we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. And what our book tells us is that we basically have a threefold disease that kind of works like this. We wander through the day aimlessly, right? Or aimfully, but either way, at some moment within that day or many moments within that day, we become restless, irritable, and discontent. I don't know if anyone can experience that or not, or has experienced it. I'm going to guess that we all have. Well, prior to recovery, prior to having this spiritual awakening that takes away this problem, we lean toward a solution, as anybody does. And in our cases, we have this thing called the obsession of the mind, which we'll talk about in a moment. But that obsession of the mind for alcohol leads to something called the first drink, right? The first drink leads to this, it sort of produces, our physiology, according to the big book and the doctor's opinion, is that our bodies are sick. Our physiology is sick, right? And so when I digest alcohol, when this body receives alcohol, what they call the allergy of the body kicks in, right? And it's basically an allergy to alcohol. And all allergies have one thing in common. They manifest themselves in non-normal ways. So if the average person, the average temperate drinker, takes a glass of wine with dinner, or maybe has a beer with some friends after work, or, a glass of champagne at the New Year's Eve party, and they have a couple of them or 2 or 3 or something, they begin to feel it. And oddly enough, they want to stop at that point, which is fairly weird of them, but they really want to, and they do so, right? That is not my case. That is not my experience. That is not how it works for me. What happens to me is this phenomenon of craving develops, which is an abnormal reaction to alcohol. And that always leads to the second drink and the third drink and the fourth drink and so on and on to oblivion. Once my physiology takes the first drink, I cannot control or predict how much I will take after that. This has been proven to me time and time again. I've heard your stories. You've confirmed it in your life. I've read stories in the big book. They've confirmed it. I have this bodily allergy. So how do we get there? Well, we get to the first drink through this thing we call the obsession of the mind. It's an inability, as the doctor's opinion would tell us, to differentiate the true from the false. That is to say, when I'm out there doing my thing in life, and I wander into a bar promising myself that whatever happened last night or last week or last month isn't going to happen again, and I swear in a stack of Bibles it's true, I'm only going to have one or two and go home. I'm going to leave at halftime or only spend $20 tonight. I'm going home. I mean, I'm leaving. I am out of here, and I mean it. And if you hook me up to a lie detector test, I'm telling you the truth. I'm passing that lie detector test. Especially in the last 6-8 months of my drinking, I wanted nothing to do with the results that my drinking brought me. And yet they always brought similar or worse results. So I couldn't determine the true from the false. And it always led me back to say, just take one or two, it'll be all right. Here's why. We have a very, very famous paragraph in the doctor's opinion that we quote all the time. And it says, men and women essentially drink because they like the effect produced by alcohol. And in my case, the effect that alcohol produced, not drunkenness, I'm talking about the very first swig of something, doesn't matter what it is this. I get the great exhale, right? All this stuff that I've been carrying all day, all this stuff that I've been carrying all week, all these things that she did to me, all these things that my boss clearly was treating me unfairly with, all these the traffic cop who wrote me up for blowing the red light, like all these things that are unfair, I carry around in my backpack, right? And by the end of the day or the end of the hour or the end of the week, it's too heavy. And I think, just give me this. And if I could have stopped there, I wouldn't be here today. Be hanging out with my grandkids probably. But I can't stop there, right? Why? Because as soon as I digest alcohol, the allergy kicks in. The phenomenon of craving develops. I go to drink 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 12, whatever it is, and oblivion. So Alcoholics Anonymous is not a solution for drunkenness. And that might sound like AA heresy, but it's not. Alcoholics Anonymous is a solution for the first drink. Because if I don't ever take the first drink, the allergy cannot induce itself. I will not pass through the well-known stages of a spree, or in my case, the sometimes well-known stages of a spree. I was a blackout drinker and wouldn't hit oblivion. So I got to figure out how to not take the first one. And if I'm going to figure out how to not take the first one, I got to figure out how to deal with all the thoughts that precede that first drink. I need a solution for my mind when I'm sober so that my mind doesn't haunt me so bad I go back to the first drink. Does that make sense? So that's what we're looking for. So we have this thing that we call spiritual maladies, right? Spiritual sickness, spiritual disease. I call it a broken soul. I think for me, that is a perfect phrase for that. And it's this restlessness, this irritability, and this discontent that runs savagely through me. You know, I go buy a new car, I pull up to a red light, and then all of a sudden, somebody in a new Maserati pulls up next to me. Suddenly, I hate my new car, right? I get cell phone envy all the time. Anybody get cell phone envy? Craig has it right now. He's bragging about his new iPhone 1, which is a big improvement from the flip phone he had last week. But anyways, yeah, the whole point of it was a dial-up flip phone. Anyways, there's no such thing, I know. Anyways, the whole point is that no matter where I'm at, something should be better. No matter how good it is, if I could only fix this part, everything would be fine. Sometimes we get this in Alcoholics Anonymous. Sometimes we feel like if I just do the right 4-step and uncover the very one thing that's wrong with me, and I get that one thing fixed, my life will be great. Absolutely untrue. Right? This is a moment-to-moment wrestling match with reality, right? When I was a kid, Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, these were all great wrestlers. You know, they were hilarious, you know. And they used to do these things called tag team matches, right? Where, you know, you'd have one gigantic freak fighting another gigantic freak, you know, and then a small guy would come in and beat up one of the gigantic freaks completely. It's a complete farce, right? But if you tap the hand of somebody, then you could get a new partner to come into the ring, right? Well, Alcoholics Anonymous is almost like that. It seems the guy we're fighting is really huge, but actually he's not. He's really small, right? And it's not just tag teaming the partner. It's grabbing his hand and having him, who is God, come in that ring with you and fight alongside of you. Matter of fact, standing right behind him and letting him be the one in the middle of you in this monstrous illusion that's creating all this havoc in my life. It's not that way at all. The reality is that the thing on the other side is nowhere near, it's very powerful when mismanaged. But if I can put God in between me and it, God always wins that fight. And so we do not work out our solution on the physical plane. We don't just lock ourselves in a closet and hide and don't drink. We don't lay on a bed in a counselor's office and talk about all the problems running through our head. That's not our solution either. Those things may be extraordinarily helpful. I don't mock those things. I'm just saying when it comes to Alcoholics Anonymous, that's not what we're presenting. What we're presenting is a path toward a God who will solve the problem for you. Those things may be helpful in that vein, but the path is to God. That's where we're headed. And so step one is a question that we ask ourselves. Do I have this? And how steps 1 and 2 work specifically are their conclusions that we draw. We get to a spot in our life where we decide this is true. And for Michael Donnelly, on this morning and this day, and has been true for the last 28 years, I have a physical allergy to alcohol. My mind does lie to me, right? And I do have a broken soul. Do I have that? Yes. What has that led to? It's led to a mismanaged life. Wrong. It's led to an unmanageable life. And the difference between mismanaged and unmanageable is significant. Mismanaged means that I had the ability to actually manage it appropriately, and I simply made mistakes. Unmanageable meant I never had the capacity to manage it. And so my every attempt was sure to fail. It wasn't in my DNA to manage my life. It was in my DNA to kneel down and let God manage my life. And every false thing I put in front of him led to more destruction. The more destruction caused me to feel restless, irritable, discontented. Because of what alcohol always does to me, and because I remember it, I have that obsession of the mind, and I long and crave that peace, that exhale. So I go back to it for 1 or 2 or 3, but certainly not the oblivion that my life had always caused me. But as soon as I do it, boom, allergy kicks off, phenomenon of craving, I'm off to the races again. So I got to fix my heart. I got to fix my soul. I got to figure out a way to fix that stuff that's inside of me that I can't really touch if I'm ever going to think clearly. Because when I think clearly, I just look at life differently. And I make different decisions. And when I make different decisions, I take different actions. And when I take different actions, my life changes. And for the better. So step 1 is really taken by throwing up that information into my personal life and asking me, do I have that? Am I like that? Do I have that allergy? Do I have that mind that lies to me? Do I have that broken soul? Is my life unmanageable? If the answer is yes, step 1 is done. It's a conclusion that I draw from my experience being thrown up against the data within the book. Step 2 is no different. So if it's true that I have this allergy, this mind that lies to me, and this broken soul, and my life is unmanageable, how do I get out of that? How do I have a good life? Well, I think back in my past, and I remember my mom saying really neat things like, God loves you, say your prayers at night, be good to people, be kind to people. And I went, that's no fun. Like, that isn't fun at all, right? But I think about it, like, nah, maybe that's there, right? Maybe that's okay. And then I meet you. And I hear your stories. And you claim to have the same problem I do, this threefold disease of alcoholism. And when I ask you how you stay sober, you say, well, I pray a lot. I try to serve my family and my friends and newcomers. I try to follow the outline principles in our big book. I try to live a spiritual life, and that helps me. And I go, well, I don't know about that one, right? Good for you, bad for me, right? And we go through this process. And step 2 is a conclusion about God's ability to bring us back to sanity. Notice our second step doesn't say sobriety. It says, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, to think true things instead of all of those lies I always thought, right? Have I come to believe that I am insane? That's the first thing. Do I really have this obsession of the mind? Do I really mull over things and believe I've got the right answer and it doesn't show up, right? Or if you can't even get there yet, maybe just over alcohol. Is the conclusion I draw from my mind that I've talked myself back into that first drink time and time and time again, and it's never worked out the way I predicted? Can I at least get there? If I can get there, I'm pretty close to step 2. The 2 most important words in step 2, I think, and I heard this on a tape many years ago from a guy named Clancy I. Clancy said that the 2 most important words in the second step were that and could. Came to believe that. So everything after this, this is what I came to believe. That a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. This step is about, do I believe that God has the ability to restore me to sanity? Do I believe he has the ability to do it? That's it. Not who is he, not, what does my, Hebrew to English lexicon say? What does God's power prevail in? Will it prevail, or could it prevail in bringing me back to sanity? And what evidence do I have that God could restore me to sanity? Again, other people in AA, right? Stories in the big book. Honesty of my beliefs. What do I really believe? Right? More clarity with time in the program. So what I might believe about God's ability to restore me to sanity in my second meeting, if I keep coming back, it's likely that I'm going to have more belief, or a thicker or a more full belief that God will restore me to sanity, or can restore me to sanity, as I stick around in the program and meet more people and talk about things and I read the literature and I get involved. The page 47 exercise, for those who are familiar with this, and those aren't, on page 47, there's a tremendous exercise, and Bill Wilson encourages us to ask ourselves, to lay aside our prejudice and to look up words in the book and to find terms that we define ourselves. Ask our hearts what we believe about them and write them down. It says, do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. And we do that. Men I sponsor and other studies we've done over the years, we do that. We get people to do that. And when they do that, it lines up perfectly with what the book says, right? It says, afterward, we found ourselves accepting many things seemed entirely out of reach. But that was growth. And if we wished to grow, we had to begin somewhere. So we used our own conception, however limited it was. Right? So if I have come to the conclusion in step 1, and I have that, step 1 is done. Through the exposure of these other things, including my own heart, have I come to the conclusion that God could restore me to sanity? Not will he, not is he going, none of that. Could he? The answer comes up yes, step 2 is done. They're just conclusions. Now, if I have this disease called alcoholism, I'm pretty much screwed. I am absolutely up a creek, right? I have a disease that I can't control. I have a mind that lies to me all the time. I have this sense of restlessness, this irritability, and this discontent. I can't find peace where I live, in this sobriety, in this life. And I always go back to the first drink. If that's where I'm at, I draw that conclusion. That's what I have. And I draw the conclusion that God could restore me to sanity. The only next logical piece of work is step 3. I mean, if I determine I'm hopeless, but I determine that there's hope out there in God, the only next logical step is step 3. Turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand him, or we understand him, right? This is stated out loud verbally in the 3rd step prayer, but really, it's really a commitment to work the final steps, 4 through 12. Here's what our book says, right? It says, we're going to read a little bit here just because I think it's important to lay the foundation. So it says, this is the how and why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He is the principal. We are his agents. He is the father. We are his children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom. So we're at a pivot point. We're laying down the terms of the agreement with God. The terms of the agreement are this: he's going to be director, he's going to be principal, he's going to be father, and I'm going to be agent and child. That's the deal, right? How do I work out agent and child? 4 through 12. I can't be agent or child without working 4 through 12. right? It says, when we sincerely took such a position, what position? Well, the one we just mentioned, that God's going to be director, principal, and father, and I'm going to be agent and child. When we sincerely took that position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. It says we had a new employer, capital E. Being all-powerful, he provided what we needed if, center of life is if, L-I-F-E, center of life is if we kept close to him and performed his work well. Established on such a footing, what footing? That I'm going to be close to him and do his work. We became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. That's head music. That's the noise that was playing to me back when I was restless, irritable, and discontent. Right? More and more, we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, we became conscious of his presence. We began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter. We were reborn. Right? It says we were now at step 3. Many of us said to our Maker as we understood him. And I'd ask you to join me in the prayer if you would. We'll say the step prayer together. God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. It says we thought well before taking this step, making sure we were ready, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to him. We found it very desirable to take this spiritual step with an understanding person such as our wife, best friend, or spiritual advisor, but it's better to meet God alone than with one who might misunderstand. The wording was, of course, quite optional, so long as we expressed the idea, voicing it without reservation. This was only a beginning, though if honestly and humbly made, in effect, sometimes a very great one was felt at once. So this idea of the third step, right? I used to think that the third step was this prayer. And why wouldn't I? Because that's sort of how we phrase it and talk to about it, right? And it certainly is a prayer. But the prayer expresses a commitment to work 4 through 12. That translated from my sponsor to me as this. If you say the third step prayer every day and don't work the steps, you haven't really taken step 3. You've only said you were gonna, right? It says next we launched out on a course of vigorous action. The first step, which is a personal house cleaning. The first step of which is a personal house cleaning. You know, we all do chores. We all have homes. We all do that kind of stuff, right? I was kidding with some of my friends the other day. I think I might have mentioned it before. If I went to my wife, and we often call this house cleaning a 4-step. On Saturdays, my wife and I usually do chores, unless I'm at one of these things, right? So would a house cleaning be me walking around the house and making a list of all the things that needed to be cleaned and then handing her the list and saying, glad the chores are done, right? That would go over terribly in my house, right? And until the place was clean, the beatings would continue. No, I'm just kidding. She doesn't beat me. No matter how much I deserve it, she's pretty gracious to me, right? But in other words, the 4th step isn't the house cleaning. The 4th step is an awareness of what needs to be cleaned, right? So he's talking here, it says the first step of which is a personal house cleaning. He's talking about 4 through 9, which many of us had never attempted. Now, why do I say it's 4 through 9? Because of this next sentence. Though our decision was a vital and crucial step, what's our decision? Step 3. It could have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face, I was taught that's 4 and 5, and to be rid of. I was taught that's 6 through 12. The things in ourselves which have been blocking us. Our liquor was but a symptom, so we had to get down to causes and conditions. Therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. This was step 4, right? So to sort of summarize step 3, it's a heart-level commitment to complete the necessary actions which produce a spiritual experience. The commitment is expressed by stating the 3rd step. The decision isn't made by stating the 3rd step, right? It says, once stated, it's now time to do the necessary work, right? So any questions on that as the fundamental basis of how we're going to start? Any thoughts or questions or comments? Is that kind of, has everybody kind of been exposed to that kind of stuff? Is that kind of how you guys talk about it in your home groups, or do you have another philosophy or an idea on it? Everybody's ideas are welcome. Okay, everybody's good. So what did we do then? Well, we got this thing out we call the 4-step, right? We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. This is how we fulfill the decision in step 3. And according to that big book, we're not going to go into great detail. Just a really quick overview to get us where we need to go to start jumping into 10, 11, and 12. There are 3 areas of our life that we look at: our resentments, our fears, and our sex conduct. And in each area of those parts of our lives, we do 3 things. One is we contemplate, we think about it, right? We answer the questions in the book. We think about those answers. Seriously, think about them. We write down what the book asks us to write down. And then in each of those 3 sections, on resentments, on fears, and on sex conduct, there's prayers that we pray, right? So sometimes I hear people say, did you do a 4-step? I say, yeah, I wrote down my resentments. There's a lot more to it than that, you know? Or I did my resentments and my fears. Okay. Or I did my resentments, my fears, and my sex conduct. Hey, did you say the prayers? What prayers? Right? So people aren't bad for that. It's just, you know, as we go through this, it's we're just trying to be complete. That's all. So once we've gotten all that written down, we do this. Step 5: admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Right? Very simply, we share what is on our 4-step with God and another human being, fully, completely. Sorry, Craig, I did that on purpose. He's taking a picture of the deal. I saw him. He was just about to hit the button. You want that back? Sorry, buddy. Sorry, buddy. Well, that? Yeah, we'll email it to you. Thanks, buddy. I saw him. He was just about to click it, and I did it intentionally. Sorry. I'll make amends later. Anyways, well, on page 75 in our big book, at the bottom of that page, there's a bunch of questions that we're to ask ourselves following our 5th step. It says we take an hour. You know, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour, taking the book down from the shelf. We can look at the first 5 proposals. Thanks, buddy. We go through that whole process. And there's questions there. Are the stones properly in place? If we try to make mortar without sand, all that kind of stuff. We have to ask ourselves. That's about our sincerity. And our sincerity simply is this kind of question. Am I really doing it? Am I really doing it? Right? After the 5th step and this hour is where I personally felt like I was actually a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Not some guy who went to meetings, who was hanging out with some nice people who gave him coffee. Like I felt a part of you. It was deep. And in that hour, we're to ask ourselves about the willingness that we have or don't have to let God remove all these defects of character. It's a yes or no question. And it doesn't belittle us, whatever our answer is. It doesn't say, well, you're a bad person because you don't want to let this go. It just says, be honest about it. And if you don't want to let it go, then you're called to action. And that action is to pray for the willingness to inevitably let it go. Right? And then we have the 7-step prayer, which is where we humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. But if you can see, those are both prayer requests. There's almost no significant action involved in those with the exception of those prayers. What do we do after that? Very simply, we take that list that we made when we wrote our 4-step and we put it on another piece of paper and we call that our 8th step. And again, we make a prayer request that God would grant us the willingness to make amends to all these people. Right? Sometimes we pole vault really quickly over step 8. In my experience, step 8 is very, very important. To take the time to pray for the willingness. There were times where I'd pull up my car in front of someone's house that I needed to make amends to, feeling like I had done step 8 prior to, weeks ago when I was praying about it. And I get up to that house and I think, don't do this one. Do not do this one, right? And this step has gotten me through. Asking God to give me the willingness is somehow I grabbed the door handle and opened the car door. Somehow I walked up the sidewalk. Somehow I actually rang the doorbell. And I'm still got sweat beads on the brow, heart racing like a rabbit, This 8th step is really important, and it's a list and a prayer request. And then, of course, make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. I was taught that I am not part of the others. I don't have to worry about that, right? God will take care of me if I clean it all up, right? So in our book, it talks about making restitution to people, to family members, to financial obligation, creditors, and so forth, to people we hated, right? It never says making amends to ourselves. That's a byproduct of doing the rest of the amends. I feel better about me when I've cleaned it up with you than I could ever feel about pampering myself to feel better about me, because I'll always carry around the garbage of unmade amends, given the discord and the disconnect because of the wrongs I've done with you. Until those are reconnected, or at least the attempt is made to reconnect them, I won't feel better about me. Thoughts or comments or questions on 4 through 9 as we quickly jump through them? Okay, so by the time we're halfway through this particular spot, right, when we're somewhere in the neighborhood of halfway through our 8th step, some things should certainly be beginning to happen to us. There's promises that we skipped over, but they're laden through this whole thing, right? They're all over the place. And the idea is in 10, 11, and 12 is we're going to take what we've learned and we're going to bring it to our regular life, and we're going to try to apply it on a moment-to-moment basis, on a day-by-day basis, with ever-increasing understanding and effectiveness. We're going to get better at what we just did. And somehow, some way, over the course of time, Alcoholics Anonymous and the steps will move from problem solving into the great state of problem prevention, right? So as this continues to happen, it isn't that AA keeps fixing my problems. Of course, AA continues to fix my problems, 100%. But more than that, something deeply is added on there. And what's added on there is I stop making bad decisions. Stop making terrible relationship decisions. Stop making bad financial moves. I stop screaming and I start listening. Like all of a sudden this begins to happen. And I'm stunned at how my behavior isn't producing a ton of problems anymore. I'm catching myself in the moment, making different decisions and moving me more toward a peaceful life, right? Instead of constantly stirring that stew or poking someone else in the ribs. Does that make sense? And that's where those promises come from, right? It is 10 to 10. I know a few of us have been here a little while. I had a couple of requests for maybe a little bathroom break. Why don't we stop for about 10 minutes? And we'll come back and we'll jump in on step 10. And if there's ever any questions or anything like that, just raise your hands. We'll get to you. But that should be a good foundation to jump on step 10. Thanks. Huh. Good? Doing all right? Good.
That was the guys that I'm not sure where they come from. It was just sitting up there.
What's it? Somebody gave you that? Might be probably Craig's, I guess. Bank of Brookings. This is what we owe you here.
Yeah, that's what.
How much was it? 81? 81.30? Yeah. Hey, Johnny. Scott.
So no one's told Nolan that right now.
What's that?
No one's told Nolan.
I haven't said anything to anybody, and I wasn't really even going to tell you guys unless you were here, which I thought you would be. But we're totally good. Like, we'll know very short. His buddy Chris is still coming, but his buddy Chris only has a couple of months. It's a guy he sponsors out there. But we will figure it out. I am
absolutely.
so not worried about it.
No, I'm not either.
We'll shuffle the
I was
deck.
just,
We'll do whatever you need. You know.
I like Kelvin.
Yeah, right. Absolutely, 100%. Right, because Frog Calvin and I, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, it'll be good.
It'll be great no matter what happens. You know what? People will get something from it, and if they take it back and apply it, they'll get more from it. And you could have the best speaker, and if everybody leaves and nobody applies what they said, wouldn't matter anyway.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I was looking forward to it, and I hope it comes because what up, T?
Hey, just was telling them
Give me one more.
this lady over here. Said,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing another step study with my first step study was 11 years ago.
Yes.
In the Tallgrass Garage.
Unbelievable! I forgot about that. That's right. Was it 11 years ago?
Yeah.
Holy
2008.
smokes! Crazy,
2008.
crazy. Tony, this is Ryan. Ryan, Tony.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Tony and I go way back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Garages.
To garages.
To garage.
Yeah. That's right. It's pretty good.
No, either way.
Yeah, it'll work out. We'll make it happen.
Yeah, don't tell Nolan yet.
No, I was
Don't freak out.
Yeah, there's no reason for it. I was telling him I wasn't going to bring it up to you guys, but you were here. Like, that's how I'll say it.
I just told him I'd let you deal with it, no matter what direction you want to go. You didn't let me deal with this. Not my pig, not my farm. Who, Don? No.
2 minutes. About 2 minutes. What was that?
So this guy Derek, who's
Yeah,
talking,
Frog, right?
Frog, yeah.
You
So-
sponsor him?
No.
Oh, really? Okay.
No.
Do I know Mike Powers?
No. So this whole thing is they asked Frog to come and do this. Frog
Yeah.
hasn't done really much of that
Uh-huh.
kind of stuff, right? So Nolan is super sensitive about it. So I keep telling
You
Nolan,
told me this already.
yeah,
just
that
jumped
Nolan,
on him.
yeah, like Nolan,
Dude, what's going on?
why are you having Frog speak? I mean, this is a big deal. I mean, you've got Mike, you've got Don, and then Frog, like doing that kind of stuff. And so he's so sensitive about it. And every time I bring it up to him, he has to go through a 5 to 10 minute explanation about why they chose
That's
that.
so great.
And then he even tries to throw Ryan into this.
Yeah.
Ryan was involved in the conversation too.
Yeah.
Like that kind of a deal. And I'm like, well, I'll talk with him later.
So we were we had our first
Meeting or whatever?
meeting, yeah, and he's like, I was talking to Kelvin and going over a couple of things, and then I had to spend 10 minutes again explaining to him why. I just got this big old smile. He's like, "What?" I was like, "Do you not realize I'm fucking with you, dude?" And he stopped. And he just had that moment of like,
Yeah, right.
like retracing every
Yeah,
time.
yeah, right, yeah.
Couldn't have been better.
No.
So Derek is he's playing it cool, but his girlfriend told me how nervous he really is. Right?
Yeah.
And so now I've just been hammering him.
Sure, sure.
He's like, well, this is what I'm going to do. Is I'm going up first. So I've been listening to Don nonstop,
yeah.
and I'm going to get up there and I'm going to tell his story.
Right.
So when he gets up there, he's just a fucking liar.
Yeah,
Right?
right. Hey, maybe people don't know Don. Maybe you could just pretend to be Don.
Yeah, perfect.
You know? Yeah, can you do a
Well,
Kentucky accent?
No. We'll let Frog do that,
I can do
and I'll
the
do
accent.
Frog.
Okay. You know my
Because he's been working on the accents.
Right.
That's the deal.
right
So we'll let Frog do Don, and I'll do Frog.
deal.
I can do Frog.
Deal.
I'll
We'll
just
work
tell
it out.
everyone how my tattoo is.
You and
Maybe
Frog
they'll-
and I, we'll figure it out. It'll be fun. It'll be fun. It'll be good.
It's a non-stop.
It is. Yeah.
You have to
Absolutely.
enjoy it. If you don't
You do.
enjoy it, then
What
why?
else are you gonna do? Right. Yeah. It'll be fine. And maybe he's still coming. Like there's no no reason to think he's not. You ready? All right, we're gonna get going. So as we said at the beginning, right? You do not have to have steps 1 through 9 completed in order to begin to practice the principles of 10, 11, and 12. You just don't. Now, will your practice of 10, 11, and 12 be likely more fruitful? Yes. Will you gain experience and understanding to bring to those other steps? Of course, right? But don't have to wait. And I would encourage you, frankly, not to, right? Step 10. It says, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. So one of the things that always threw me in Alcoholics Anonymous was, okay, so I'd come to a meeting and there'd be signs like this on the wall, right? And I'd come over to the sign and I'd look at the sign and I'd say, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And I'd think about it for a second and I'd go, okay, yeah, a lot of crap there. I'm done, right? I mean, Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Yeah. Well, here, God, I'm pretty selfish, and I could laugh with my friends about my selfishness. I mean, if I'm going to take the verbiage on the wall as the step, or how to work the step, I'm going to be missing a lot. So I had a conversation with my sponsor at the time, and the one thing he shared with me and talked with me, which has been extraordinarily important, life-changing to me, is that those aren't the steps, and those aren't the traditions, and those are not the concepts of world service. Those are the titles of the steps, titles of the traditions, titles of the concepts, right? Just take 6 and 7 alone, right? We have 2 paragraphs in the big book that teach us how to do it, right? Not one of them say the title of the step in there. Those are just the titles. There is page upon page upon page about how to do a 4-step in the big book. There is page upon page upon page about how to do a 5th step in the big book, right? I can't glean that from just looking at the wall, right? So when I read this, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it, which is the title that can easily be mistaken for the step work, I'm going to miss a whole bunch of stuff. So as we move forward, we're going to read a little bit, right? And then we're going to do some exercises, and we're going to get into this pretty good here. At the bottom of page 83, it says, if we are painstaking about this phase of our development, painstaking. How brilliant was Bill Wilson, by the way? He had 4 years when he wrote this stuff. It's crazy. So I hear people say, guys I sponsor, friends of mine in the program, even myself at different times, I'm not sure I want to go forward because of how I feel. I feel so bad. I'm so afraid. There's a ton of pain there. I don't know if I want to address all that pain. Wilson says we should stake our pain on it. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we are going to be amazed before we're halfway through. And then it goes into what we always call the promises. And there's a heck of a lot more promises than just these, but these are the ones we generally call the promises. It says we're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. That's a great one, know peace. It says no matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. And if you ask me, the best promise in this list is the next one. It says they will always materialize if we work for them. Right? My sponsor told me that you can flip that around if you'd like without trying to change the black. And it says they will never materialize if you don't work for them. Right? This thought, what thought? That if we work for them, they will materialize. This thought brings us to step 10. Which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commenced this way of living as we cleaned up the past. Remember we talked about that house cleaning? And that house cleaning was more than just a personal inventory. It was 4 through 12 or 4 through 9, depending on how you want to phrase that, right? We have entered the world of the Spirit. That's an interesting line. We've entered the world of the Spirit. It says our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. Craig, would you underline that in your book, please? Thank you. Sorry, he's one of the most judgmental people I know. So I'm kidding. He is the most judgmental. No, I'm just going to do it. It says, and we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For sanity will have returned. What a tremendous promise, right? These are all great ones here. For by this time sanity will have returned. We seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we have been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. This is our experience. This is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. It is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. You know, it's interesting. The first 9 steps always gave us something to think about, something to pray about, and something to act on, right? Even if it was only go on to the next step. This is the same thing. It almost always comes back to contemplation, to prayerfulness, and to behavior. Contemplation, prayerfulness, behavior. Almost every time. So let's break this down just a little bit, right? 4 little parts. Again, back to that promise, they will always materialize if we work for them. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and set right any new mistakes we go along. We vigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past. We have entered the world of the Spirit. Any thoughts on what that might mean? We have entered the world of the Spirit. Any thoughts from anybody? Feel God's presence at all times? Okay, very good. Anybody else? We have had a spiritual awakening. I think that's true, Jeff. Yeah? Todd, you got one over there? You've opened the door of communication with the higher power. Very good. What? Anybody else? Amongst one another. You know, I got to tell you, almost every description of the 4 there were relationally oriented, right? Where it was the door breaking down those things, right? Had a spiritual experience, feeling this presence of God in your life, right? Like Todd talked about opening that door. Each one of those descriptions is somewhat of a relational description, and I think that's true. And although each one of us may find different words on how to communicate that, the essence of that thing Bill Wilson talked about, the language of the heart, is key. To be able to understand that we have entered the world of the Spirit. It also leads to a question, what world were we in before that? Just rhetorical question, don't need answers on that. But just, you know, makes me think. I was in the world of myself, right? Me, and I forgot me. I can't forget me in that, yeah, right? It's all about me. Every bit of it, right? Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. That's a beautiful promise in and of itself. If I keep on this way, my life and how I live it will grow in understanding and effectiveness. And what would I do with that? If I grow in understanding about how life operates and works in God's world or in the world of the Spirit, as we just call it, what am I supposed to do with that? I'm supposed to give it away. I'm supposed to share it with others, right? I'm supposed to bring it home to my family. I'm supposed to bring it to my marriage and how I raise my children. What a beautiful baby, by the way. Yeah. That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Planting the seeds. Very good. Yeah. You know. Yeah.
This didn't make sense to me until I did discuss.
Okay. Yep. This part, these sentences. Yeah. Yeah. Can everybody hear him? Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, thank you very much. And by the way, just raise your hand if you got a comment or you throw a shoe at me or whatever you need to do to get my attention. Like, feel free, right? So this is setting the tone for the next part of this paragraph. And the next part of the paragraph is the practical application of how to work step 10. Right? These are the directions on how we work a 10th step. It says, continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. What do you think they mean by watch for? Anyone? How do you watch for fear? There you go. You have to be conscious of it, right? You have to be aware of it, right? Right? You sort of pay attention as to what's going on inside of you. Now that's an interesting point. Like if I'm going to be aware of what's going on inside of me, that has to change the definition a little bit of who I am. See, I used to define myself by my feelings. I used to define myself by my emotions. I used to define myself by my reactions. And I would say, well, that's just how I am. I'm an emotional person. Well, that might be true, right? In some description. But here it's almost separating them. It says, Mike, inside of yourself, take a step back and watch how you feel. Almost like, Mike, you're not what you feel. You have to be you, the real you inside there, has to be aware of what's going on inside you. Almost like they're different parts. Does that make sense? It says, continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, which means they're going to, right? It says, we ask God at once to remove them. It's the first action. So it's almost like, here's me walking down the street, or I'm in the mall, or I'm going to go to a baseball game, or I'm hanging out with friends, or it's a dinner table, and I suddenly feel selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, or fear coming on me. First thing I do is ask God to remove it. Right away. I don't let it manifest itself. I don't just ignore it. I don't feed the other dog, as sometimes we hear, right? God bless them. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just saying that's not what we hear here, right? It says we ask God to remove it, right? Not help us handle it or manage it. Remove it. It says we discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. So I don't know if is there anybody married here? Some few folks are married, right? Anybody been married? Right? Anybody regretting either one? Just kidding. Joke. It's a joke. It's a joke. It's a joke. Oh, what? Alicia raised her hand. That was weird. Yeah. So no surprise. No surprise. To anyone who knows Shane, it's not a surprise. Anyways, the whole thing, like this is a great example of this, right? Because in marriage, right? In many very close, intimate relationships, could be parent and child, could be or child to parent, right? These things crop up all the time, right? All the time. And what I would do early in my life is I would say, well, of course I was dishonest. Look what you did. I wouldn't feel this way if you hadn't. Our relationship could be better if you would have only, right? Now, early in my marriage, it wasn't going well. I'll be real frank. She had a lot of work to do, and it wasn't a joke. I don't know why you're laughing, but she had a lot of work to do, and I was there to serve her, and so I felt the need to let her know how much work she needed to continue to do, and for some reason, it wasn't flourishing. I'm not really sure why. And so the reality of it was that we both had work to do, right? We both had work. Of course we did. We're human beings. Why wouldn't we have work to do in that deal? But sometimes the way my mind would work, thinking my thoughts were me, thinking my emotions were me, thinking my feelings were me, I would interpret her thoughts, her words, the things she did, the action she took. I would interpret them. And of course, it never dawned on me that maybe I was wrong with that my interpretations were wrong. But she would say things like, honey, could you pass the salt at the dinner table? Right? And I would hear, in about 3 weeks, I'm leaving you. I'm just getting all my ducks in a row first, and then I'm leaving. Right? She would say, well, why did you do that? And I would hear, "You're a horrible husband. I wish I'd never married you." She would say, "You know, that bill is coming due next week. We should probably figure out how to pay for that." And I would hear, "Get a job, you loser. Get a job that brings home more money because you're terrible at raising and funding this family." Like, she never said any of that. She said zero of that. But I interpreted what she was doing and saying and acting like. I got the final say on what all that meant. And it caused great havoc in our marriage. And I did that because I thought everything that came through my head was true. I live by this rule. If I think it, it must be true. None of it was. I attached myself so closely with my emotions that if I felt something, it was clearly accurate. And how she couldn't see it was only proof of how wrong she was. Anybody have similar experiences like that with people? Man, all over the place, right? So this separates that. This allows me breathing room in between what I'm feeling and how I act, right? Because we're not bad for having those. Notice it doesn't say, "Oh, and by the way, if you're feeling this way, you're a jerk." It doesn't say that anywhere. By the way, you're a pathetic human being. And that might be true in some of our cases, right? Is this on? I was kidding. I was joking, right? It doesn't say any of that. It doesn't say that anywhere. It almost states it as though this was a normal human experience. And I got to tell you, when I talk to my friends who are trying to live a spiritual life who are not in Alcoholics Anonymous, the stuff we're going to cover in 10, 11, and 12 is the same very things they battle every single day. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. So, it says that we make amends quickly if we've harmed anyone. We don't wait, we do it then. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. That's tremendous. It just gave me 4 things to look for and 4 things to do once I find any of the 4 things I'm supposed to be looking for. When I see selfishness, resentment, dishonesty, and fear in my life, I'm supposed to ask God to remove it, talk to someone about it, make amends quickly if I've harmed someone, and resolutely turn my thoughts to someone I can serve, someone I can help. Right? To have love and tolerance be my code. So how does this operate? What does this look like? Right? So I don't know about your lives, I just know about mine. And if I'm dancing through the mall or walking through the grocery store, or man, I don't know, I'm at a baseball game or something like that, or just the family's around, or I'm hanging out with my buddies in AA or whatever it is, like my head is a flurry of activity. Right? All kinds of comments, all kinds of thoughts, all kinds of judgments, all kinds of experiences running in my head. Sometimes, I don't know, you guys probably haven't had this experience, but it's so thick with me sometimes that I could actually be dialoguing with you, and a few seconds into the conversation, I'm looking at you in the eye and I'm shaking my head, yes, like I'm in deep connection with you, and I have absolutely no idea what you just said. And so I just go, yeah, that's true. Anyway, and moving on, whatever, right? You know, I can be so out of the moment, man. Right? Can be. A lot of reasons for that. But none of them criticize me. None of them listed criticize me. They just say, you are not that. You did that, but you're not that. Here's what you are, the observer. You're the observer of what's going on. And the more closely that you can observe as what's going on, the more willful decisions you can make to align yourself with the will of God. Okay? See, I have a theory, and I think every human being is addicted to something, but all of us are addicted to distraction. The distraction from the moment is the thing that gets us all. And if we can somehow find a way to clear away the bugs and the flies and the gnats at the picnic and our going on in our head, we can stay more closely connected to the moment. And I believe, at least it's my experience, that that's the only place that God lives. God only lives in the now. And so if I could stay with him in the now, I would likely be responding to life in a way that's closer to what he would have me be. And Step 10 is a tool for that. So the guys I sponsor will call me up, Mike, hey, this is going on, that's going on, right? And depending on the circumstances and the situations, I'll roll through this thing with them, right? And after they get done sort of telling me the story of whatever happened, many times I'll stop and I'll say, did you pray about it? Did you ask God to remove it? And sometimes they say yes, and sometimes they say no. And when they say no, I say, okay, I'll hold. Because we're not really going to get anywhere unless we do the work. And the worst possible thing I could tell them as a sponsor is that, okay, now that you've finished your story, let me lecture at you for 40 minutes and tell you how great I am and give you a big dissertation on fear and selfishness and rage and whatever else is going on. They don't need a lecture from me. They called me because they already knew. Now, Craig might need a lecture from me, but yeah, right, yeah. So I should rephrase that. The sane ones do not need lectures from me. But the point of the whole thing is, it's the work. It's the work that changes their heart. Not hearing from me. My sponsor is brilliant, way beyond me. And I love that man to death. The other day, I called him up and I told him about some of my things. And he said, you know, Mac, and I'm telling you that, like when I hear that, I know wisdom is coming. He's from Kentucky. And I know wisdom's coming right after that. You know, Mac, and I'm ready. Hit record because I want to remember what he's going to say. I agree. You have some problems going on. And there's, I got to tell you, I'm walking with you through that. I see your plight, and I am walking with you next to it, brother. I am sharing everything you're going through right now. I'm walking with you in it, but I have to tell you, your problems are grossly unimpressive. And I burst into laughter, right? Because it's hilarious how dramatic I can make things, right? And given the life I had before I met all of you, which by the way, thank you for being here, because I don't know what I would have done without you. What's that? One more time? I would have done chores. That's right. That's right. But, you know, the whole idea of like having someone just bring some clarity to my thought, you know, and then guide me right back. Did we pray about it, Mike? You're talking to me, so that's done. Did you do something stupid based on your emotions? Yes. Then go make amends right now. No, I didn't do anything. Then you don't need to make amends. We're fine. Right? I got to tell you, the kicker in this is that last couple of sentences for me. After we've asked God to remove it, and we're talking to somebody, and we've made amends quickly, that idea that we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help is a game changer. Right? So many times I'll get calls and won't know what to do. Right? Well, I don't know. I'm driving to Rapid City, or I'm on the road. There's nobody I can help right now, or whatever. So figure something out. Call me back. Well, okay. And they call back and they have the most extraordinary things. I have to tell you, I just totally admitted that my sponsor was just so far beyond me. I just love the man. I look up to him so much. But I got to tell you, it's the men that I sponsor that have taught me how practical and granular this is, how simple livingly this is. I'll hear things like, when I go home, I'm going to rake the yard for my wife. Rake the yard? Raking is part of Alcoholics Anonymous? Damn right it is. Right? Tonight I'm going to bring dinner home so my wife doesn't have to cook again. What? Yep. That's all part of Alcoholics Anonymous. Right? When I come home, I know that after long working days, my wife really wants to talk about things, and sometimes I'm too tired to do so, so I'm just going to shut up and listen to her. I'm not going to interrupt her. She's going to get 15, 20 minutes before I need to tell her it's time to eat or whatever it is, but she's going to get unadulterated, pure attention for 10 or 15 minutes when I come home. That's what she needs. I didn't know listening was part of Alcoholics Anonymous. You got to be kidding me. All those little things. All those little things. And it doesn't matter the depth of service. It's the point of our hearts moving from selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, tapping into God's help through prayer, clearing the conduit out by making amends, and then letting that grace flow through us to love someone else. That's a spiritual life. That is a spiritual life right there. And then it says, and we have ceased fighting anything. But before we go on, is there any comments in that paragraph or anything that jumps out at anybody? No? Okay. It says, and we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. How about these promises? For by this time sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. I thought I had an obsession of the mind. When did that go away? Well, I just got sanity back. No more obsession of the mind. People say I went out and had a slip. I was sober for 10 years. I went out and had a slip. I'm not here to judge any of that. That's none of my business. But it would seem to me that something was wrong with 1 through 9, or that perhaps 10 wasn't really being worked, because that promise says that shouldn't happen. Again, I don't assess that. It's none of my business. But it would seem to me that myself personally, Michael Donnelly, I'm going to stay as close as I can. I'm going to wrap myself in these 3 steps because of that promise. Right? It says, if tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. Well, how am I going to slip if that's the case? It's a pretty darn good promise there too, right? It says we react sanely and normally. And we will find that this has happened automatically. Imagine what your family and what your friends from the prior world that we came from would think of us if suddenly we began to react sanely and normally. That's a different Mike there, right? It says, we will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That's the miracle of it. We are not fighting it. Neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. Safe and protected from whom or by whom? Right? God, of course, right? It says we have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. The problem has been removed. What a tremendous statement. It does not exist for us. Now Wilson is really losing it. The problem doesn't exist, right? It says we are neither cocky nor are we afraid. This is our experience. This is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. And how do we keep in fit spiritual condition? The paragraph before tells us. We continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear when these crop up, ... I got to tell you, I was driving a job in Omaha. This is where our corporate office was at the time. And the company I was working for when I first moved out here had their regional office in Omaha. And I was coming along 680 trying to get back on 290, or what do you call it, 90 or 29 coming north. And they had all asked me to go out. I was about maybe 7 or 8 months sober, working really hard on the steps, trying to do as much as I could in the program, you know. And I'm coming around 680 north, and I left their office, and they had asked me, like, let's go out for a couple of drinks now that, you know, you're working out here, and we got to get to know you a little better. And I said, geez, you know, I really got to go see a guy about a thing, which is my excuse when early in recovery, when people ask me out to drink, you know, I say, geez, I'd love to, but I got another appointment, you know, and then that appointment was set with my sponsor. And my sponsor told me at the time, anytime you ever are asked to go out or something like that, or something makes you feel uncomfortable and you have to leave a situation, you and I have a scheduled appointment 2 minutes after you feel that. That way you're not lying about saying it, and you call me right away after you feel it, right? So I'm driving, so I know I got to go see a guy about a thing, and okay, that's fine. So I'm coming around the interstate, and I am like thrilled at this point. I am thrilled. I have 7 or 8 months of sobriety. I didn't drink. I was asked out. Nobody would know it was Omaha. I don't know anybody in Omaha except these people. I could have totally gotten away with it. Nothing bad would have ever happened. Right. Anyway, but this is what I'm thinking as I'm driving along 680, and you still didn't drink. You could have gotten away with it, and you didn't even drink when you could have gotten away with it. You're doing great. And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing great. And then I think, a real alcoholic, would have done that. And you're working the steps and you're in the program and you're doing the deal and you're doing pretty good. And I went, yeah, I'm working the program. I'm doing the steps. I'm doing pretty good. So, but most people don't do that. Like a lot of us come in and then they leave again. Like, but you're not doing that. You're doing really, really good. Yeah, I'm doing great. And I keep puffing up my ego unintentionally. And I'm dialoguing with my own thoughts. Anybody ever dialogue with their own thoughts? Like first person? Hey, Mike, here's what you should do. Who is this? It's you. Don't worry about it. Everything will be fine. And I'm having this internal conversation with myself as I'm zipping along 680 North. And the final thing I hear me say is, because most alcoholics would have slipped after that request, which isn't true, by the way. That's just what I told myself. And because you're working the program, you didn't slip, but most would have. It probably means you're not alcoholic. So you know what you should do? You should go back and hang out with those guys tonight and have a few drinks. And immediately, sweat beads formed all over me. Like, I couldn't believe I just had a conversation with myself, talking myself back into drinking the very thing I didn't want to do. No sanity at all. Okay? So I did this, and it came back. I found myself coming back. And I've had faith in this process ever since. And I found myself, after doing this, to be placed back in that position of neutrality, safe and protected. I found myself put back into this idea where I'm not fighting it. Right? I found myself being put back. And this step will bring us back and back and back to those spots of connectedness with God. He will keep us safe and protected. Right? It says it's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble. If we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. Why? Because alcoholism isn't about drinking. Alcoholism is about having an allergy. It's about having a mind that potentially can lie to us at any given moment. And it's about having a broken soul. It says we are headed for trouble if we do, for alcoholism. Alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. So not only did I get my sanity back, which if you trust Western thought, either theology or philosophy, that's 50% of my soul is the intellect. Guess what the other 50% is? My will. It told me that sanity will return and I'll get my will back. Guess what happened? My soul got healed. That's crazy. I wasn't expecting that. But if that internal thing wasn't healed, how could I react sanely and normally? How could that actually be going on in my life without having that spiritual malady be healed? If in fact that's the crux of my problem to begin with. Because if the crux of my problem is not healed, I will continue to behave in the ways I've always behaved. But if I get my sanity back and I get my will back and I use my will in alliance and along the avenues of which I think God would have me live, I'm there. I've peaked. Doesn't get any better than that. Now it's about staying on the mountaintop, which doesn't really happen, right? At least I haven't figured out how to stay there, But even when I see the next mountain I have to climb, I have trust that it'll be done. I have experience with it now. I know he won't let me down. I know that all of you won't let me down. I know that I can trust the book. I have enough experience with it to know that I can trust it. Before we go on, let's talk a little bit about step 10. What are your experiences with step 10? How do you guys work it?
I pretty much work it. Like the first day, I was having to come back into recovery. I've had many relapses. So
Can everyone hear Tony? Should we give her the mic?
no, I'm good. I got a good mouth.
Okay, all right.
Pretty much when I decided to put down the drink and quit having the insanity and that I want my recovery and my sobriety again is when I start working my step 9 myself.
Okay.
Is when I can no longer do spoken amends. I can just do daily amends for my behaviors in my life.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else?
Well, I mean, I really didn't start to repent until I really did a fourth step. When I first went into treatment, when I went to treatment the first time that I seriously, my fourth step was pretty quick because I didn't understand what being selfish was. I didn't understand, all of these things that I was doing to other people, and therefore they weren't there for you guys because I didn't think they were wrong. Went back out, listened to some people, had a more experience, and I started to understand how I was being selfish, how I was being afraid of things that I've never been afraid before. You guys really screwed my life on. But once you start realizing that, then you can start seeing that in your life. At first it's like a really big delay. I did something, and then about 2 hours later, it's like, oh shoot, that wasn't good. And it got quicker and quicker until you'd see coming out of your mouth going, ooh, that's not right. Until you finally get to the point where you stop and think about things before you say it or do it, and it saves a lot of time in my life to do that. So. So says the woman who knows. But yeah, until you really understand where those are manifesting themselves in your life, step 10 was immaterial because I didn't get it. And then once you get it, it's a great time saver because if you get on top of it right away, usually you don't have a big extended course step again next year. Well, there are certain things that come to mind, and it is a growing process. And if you stop, the world's going to go by you, and all that crap's going to catch back up with you. So, gotta keep moving.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes. You're getting a mic. You're too sweet to not have a mic. You're never going to carry it across.
I find I travel a lot because I'm a nursing home here. And especially like this summer, we have so much road construction. And even traveling outside of the city, and I can become irritated very quickly. And so then it's becoming much easier now because I think about, well, what is it about that person in front of me driving 30 miles an hour and 45 miles speed zone? And so instead of honking the horn or trying to pass, just try to relax and pray for the person. Let somebody in that wants to get in his mind. And all of a sudden your thoughts and behaviors change. And I think that's all related.
Very good. Anybody else? Calvin, we'll come back, sir. Okay. We're going to start doing that now.
I get it's kind of one of those things where the end of the reading there says that we carefully follow directions and sense the flow of the Spirit into us. To some extent, we become God conscious, and we begin to develop this vital sixth sense. And I can always tell if there's something off if I'm thinking about it for more than a couple of seconds. And it's a case in point. I had quit chewing tobacco for about 9 months, and I had some crap go on this year, so I grabbed a can again, and then I was hiding it from my wife and daughter. So I called my sponsor, and he said, "Did you pray about it?" And I said, "No." He goes, "Oh, wait." But what it was, as soon as I started realizing if there's something off inside of me about it, it's something I need to examine, and that's when I go right back to this, to these directions, you know. And how I can continue to look for it is this sense of this feel and this flow of what, if I have a moral conflict, if I've said something to somebody that I shouldn't have said, if I've done something I shouldn't have done. And because for me, and I love it because it says, selfish, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. If you want me to lie, cheat, steal, do something wrong, scare me. When I'm afraid, I automatically resort back to those actions. And it's those actions are the ones that I have to correct immediately. So the day that my sponsor told me to have that conversation, I went to my wife that day and I said, hey, this is what happened. And it's just, it seems like it's something small, but at the end of the day, if I'm having to hide it, then it's something that I should be sharing with somebody or I should be correcting. So it's a constant, I get the feeling, and once I get that feeling, I realize it's not my feelings, that's God working in my life. Because my feelings, I'll bury that, or I'll dismiss it, or I'll just walk past it, or just, okay, well, that's because he's a jerk. You know, or that's because they said this, or I can, if I'm justifying it in my mind, then I know that there's something else that's got to come out of it.
Very good. Thank you, Cal. Sarah?
It kind of said what I was going to say. At the very beginning, when I first started getting sober, my 10-step was very intentional. Like, I had to read it specifically, do all these things, but now being sober a few more 24 hours, it comes more naturally. If I start feeling the issues, if I start knowing that I'm off just a little bit, and that, you know, to me, then that's me doing my 10-step, and then I know what I'm supposed to do. But back in the, you know, at the very beginning, it's like, selfishness. Yeah, I probably had some of that, or dishonesty, you know, am I feeling that? Maybe, you know, but resentment and fear were kind of one of the bigger ones that I had. You know, and it says when these crop up. It doesn't say if they crop up. So we know that they're going to crop up at some point in our life. So we're not, they don't just go away. It's something that we have to continue to watch for. You know, and that's the whole key of having that second change, of knowing when you're off and what you're supposed to do about it. And work with somebody. Working with somebody always makes it go away. It's just out of stuff. And that's what's so awesome about working with stuff.
Very good. Anyone else? Thank you, Sarah. Craig?
You know, I was listening to people share today. I was listening to two different things. You know, I love the time-saving aspect of it. I remember, it's been a few years back now, but I remember when I would be at work and my name would come across the intercom that I'd go to the front office or to speak to somebody. And again, fear sets in and I want to be defensive right away. Something odd came across my mind is, how about if I listen to them all the way through without interrupting them? And asking God for that strength. You know, and what is interesting, every single time I've said that prayer, I've gotten that ability to let them tell me all the way through. And for the most part, it's never been bad. You know, some of it may be addressing my laziness or inability to, you know, fulfill the job title that I had at the time, but most of the time it's just they just needed some clarification. And I don't know why I'm so afraid to be transparent, you know, that I need to hold things back. The other thing was I was thinking about as people were sharing was the gift of conscience, of feeling convicted that I've done something. How that is a gift, because it shows me the separation that I'm feeling from God at that point. It's like I lived in that state continually in the past. Now, when I have it, it's like that burn in your saddle. It's like you just can't get comfortable again with it until you address it. So that's kind of what I was thinking.
Very good. Anybody else? Scotty? Okay. Yeah, that's cool.
It's like, you know when you're
thinking the right thing. You learn that.
Hmm.
And you feel good about it.
That's right. That's right. Lon, you got something?
My sponsor told me that your heart and your mind and your gut are not all lined up.
Say that. Would you say that again?
My sponsor told me if your heart, your mind, and your gut aren't all in tune, you better be talking to somebody. Because something's telling you, if you're guessing yourself. That really has helped me lately from making wrong mistakes.
It's very good. Thank you very much. Right. So it seems, right, like, and maybe, again, you guys all said this stuff, but you got to tell me if what I heard was accurate. So we talked about it, the first 9 steps gets us in line with others, right? And as we do that, we sort of feel like we're getting in line with God. The provoking us to do the 10th step to bring us back to alignment with God is when we're out of line with ourselves. Your head, your gut, your mind, however that was phrased, Calvin's deal, right? Even what Craig said, Sarah, right? What you were talking about, the driving, right? What's with that guy? You know, whatever. And the idea of being aware of what's happening within me, that is not necessarily me. Oh, sorry, my own advice. Sorry. That's not necessarily me. That's just what I'm experiencing in that moment, right? But that's all stuff from the outside that's provoking stuff on my inside. If all of that stuff that's provoked from the outside on my inside is me, then who am I? What am I? The control the world has over me is so great. There's no independence in that. There's no freedom in that. I'm a reactionary person. But if no matter what comes at me and no matter what I feel like, I can practice these principles in the 10th step, I can retain my independence regardless of my feelings. And there's beauty in that, right? And God is about freedom. Lon?
Well, I was going to say, before I got in trouble, I didn't see the signs from God. But once I got in trouble or got set for 9 months, I was able to see all the signs that God was giving me. And I still see the signs from God today to make me the right choices.
Beautiful. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to practice this, right? There's plenty of tables here. If you're at a table with 5, 6 people and you need a little elbow room and some space, go grab one of the other tables, just get some elbow room and some space. And we're just going to just quickly, very, very quickly, we're going to take 20 minutes, right? And just look at this. What areas of our life need to change? Between the last inventory we did and now. You may have done it this morning and you may have done it a second ago and you got nothing to write down. That's okay. Give credence to people and peace to people that need to look. There's a bunch of, on the tables, there should be some papers that just says notes on it. You can do it in your own book. If you have your own notebook, you want to do that, it's fine. Doesn't really matter, right? But as of today, as of now, where is selfishness, resentment, fear, and dishonesty in your life? Maybe nowhere. God bless you. That's wonderful, right? But there may be something you've been avoiding, like Calvin kind of gave his example, right? There may be some patterns in your life, like we've heard, like, frustration with drivers or what have you, right? What needs to change? Just briefly, right? Just briefly. We don't have to write a full 4-step on it. Just briefly. Just bring your awareness higher by writing it down. And if you're untrustworthy of the people at your table, and I'm saying specifically for the people at Craig's table, write in code. As long as you know what it means, that's all that matters. That's all that matters. What in your life has been avoided? We will take about maybe 20 minutes to do this, and then we'll take another break. Okay, so we'll funnel this right into your break. So if you're done, you're free to call you back. Thanks. Someone asked me a while ago, how do we do this at another workshop we were doing on step 10, 11, and 12? And we said, well, we do exactly what's in the book. We continue to watch for selfishness. So the question was, where is selfishness still alive in your life? Right? Where is dishonesty? Are you covering up in your life? You know, what are you afraid of? You know, who do you resent? Just very simply, right through the work. And again, there's no hurry on this, but when your list is done, ask God to remove them. Take a few moments of prayer and ask God to remove those things. once you've written down and you've said some prayers, think about how you might make amends for those things, or any amends that are still open that need to be completed there. So this idea of resolutely turning our thoughts to someone we can help. I have several men that I sponsor. This principle has been a big part of their recovery and has been extraordinarily inspirational for me. One gentleman that I sponsor, and he and his wife tend to bite each other's heels a little bit. They tend to bark at each other. And when they catch themselves doing it, they have a list of things that they'll do for each other on the refrigerator. So when they resolutely turn their thoughts to someone they can help, they think of each other. And they go to the refrigerator and they look at that list, and then they go do one of the things on that list for their partner, for their spouse, right? I have other guys that I sponsor, and they just kind of do it on the fly. Doesn't matter, right? But think about things that you can do for other people, right? And it's a good time to practice that. So, this idea of resolutely turning your thoughts to someone you can help, that love and tolerance is now our code, having a list of ideas of things that you can do. Prayer is something you can do for people right away, serving other people in whatever manner that might mean, those are all things that you can do for other people. So. So keep taking time to write, think, pray, whatever you need to do. It's no problem. We're going to pick back up at about 11:15. So if you want to take a break, step outside. If you're finished, use facilities, chat, whatever. Thank you very much.